Today we're at the Indian Cultural Center and also the temple here in Greater Memphis. Behind me is a statue of Lord Ram. Lord Ram is the hero of the Ramayana, one of the great epics that establishes Hindu philosophy. In today's session we're going to be talking about the philosophical underpinnings of Hinduism. What is Hinduism in general, and what is the philosophy behind it that guides the lives of over 1 billion people? Hopefully you'll find it interesting. Welcome back to Traditional World Religions and Cults. We're beginning a new unit today. We're going to be talking about Hinduism, and today we're going to be focusing on philosophical Hinduism. I hope you enjoyed watching the video earlier. Just to give you an idea of what Hinduism looks like, I wish we could have the smells and all of your senses involved in what's going on as you're observing some of these videos, but at least you can see and hear what Hinduism looks like in its own context. Today we're going to be talking about Hinduism as a philosophy, as a worldview, and just some of the background ideas. And we want to start by talking about the word itself, Hindu. Where does that word come from? In 522 BC, Darius I of Persia, he's the one that's in the book of Daniel, he became the ruler of the Persian Empire. His territories expanded past the Sindhu River. So if you're looking at South Asia, the green part of that map, and then you see there are a bunch of rivers there on the top left of the green just before you start getting into the mountains. That's the river, the Sindhu River. By the year 518 BC, there are rock inscriptions describing his empire having extended to include parts of South Asia. To the local population, Sindhu was the name of the area of that river valley. But the Sanskrit S was not in the Persian phonetic alphabet, and so they replaced it with the letter H. So they said Hindu instead of Sindhu. By 486, the capital of the Persian Empire moved from Persepolis to Susa, and Hindu had become the name for South Asia. Over time, stories of the Hindu region spread from Persia to the Greek Empire, where it was further mispronounced and translated to simply become Ind. By the time of Alexander the Great in 326 BC, when he came into South Asia, it had morphed into India, the land beyond the Indus River Valley, and India became the common word to describe the entire geographic area of South Asia in Latin and later in other European languages. So India became the name of this landmass because of a mispronunciation of the valley around a river called the Sindhu. In the Middle East, the term for South Asia stayed closer to the Persian translation and went from Hindu to Hindustan, or the place of the Hindus, stan being a suffix meaning place of. So Pakistan is the place of the pure, Pak meaning pure. So Hindustan was the place of the Hindus. When the Muslim incursions into South Asia began, they called the people who lived in Hindustan Hindus. The British followed the Muslims' example, and by the time of their colonial reign in India, they defined a Hindu as any person being from South Asia who is a practitioner of any belief system that originated in South Asia. This meant that Buddhists, Jains, Sikhs, animists, all of these people were considered Hindu in the eyes of the British. So your choice was you could be Jewish, you could be Christian, you could be Muslim, or you were Hindu. The censuses of India as late as the 1970s still classified the Sikhs, the Buddhists, the Jains, and the animists all as Hindus, and that continues in some government documents today. So this is why we're going to find a jumble of beliefs over thousands of years, because they were independent religions that had similarities in the background of their philosophy, but uniquenesses as well. But they all got jumbled up through a misunderstanding of a word to be called Hindu. There's some key terms that we need to understand if we're going to understand this philosophy of Hinduism. Hinduism differs from Christianity in that it does not have a single founder. There's not a specific theological system. There's not a single concept of deity. There's not a single holy text. There's not a single system of morality, a central religious authority, or the concept of a prophet. It is fluid and it is changing. A Hindu can be a pantheist, a polytheist, a monotheist, an agnostic, or even an atheist. The only intolerance is for those who say there's only one way to God. So this broad category of belief systems, they do have some things that are in common, but everything that we discuss when we're talking about Hinduism, you will easily find a person who would call themselves a Hindu who would say, no, I don't believe that. That does not represent me at all. So don't be surprised that you're going to hear a lot of different ideas, even conflicting ideas through this presentation, through the books, and then as you talk to people. A key concept, generally true throughout Hinduism, would be the goal of mukti. Mukti means salvation. It comes not from being forgiven of sin, but in being freed from the ignorance that has not allowed someone to properly relate to the truth. Part of that truth is related to the concepts of monism and Maya. Monism is the idea that everything that exists is an emanation from the one reality. This Sanskrit letter here on the right side of the screen is the symbol for Om. Om is considered to be the sound of the universe, and those who want to be in tune with all of reality will repeat this sound, reflecting that monistic view, monism, that everything is all part of the one. The soul is a spark or a piece of what is God, of what is ultimate reality. Everything is related. Maya, on the other hand, is the concept that what we perceive in this world is an illusion. The world around us is deceptive in its appearance, and Hinduism finds more value in the spiritual rather than the physical, because the physical is just a shadow or an illusion or Maya. So the way a person in Hinduism perceives finding salvation, finding mukti, is rejoining with the one, monism, by recognizing the falseness of this world that we see, Maya. The process of doing that is through following one's dharma. Dharma means the right way of life and thought. Sin is adharam, meaning not following your way of life. This is the tricky part. Dharma is different. Every person has a different thing that they are supposed to do. So what is the right thing for an individual to do in a particular situation may be considered the exact opposite of what another person should do in that exact situation. Because your dharma, your path, is going to be determined by your caste, your gender, your stage of life. So many things will factor into how a person should respond to a particular issue that comes up in their life or event or decision that needs to be made. Karma is the law of cause and effect. It is actually considered to be a substance, a sticky substance that will attach to the soul based on deeds, whether a person is following their dharma or if they are behaving in a way that is adharam or against their dharma. And so it will influence what happens to them in the next incarnation, because at the basis of most Hindu philosophy is the concept of reincarnation or the transmigration of the soul, this endless cycle of birth, death, rebirth. Nothing ever really disappears because it's all part of that one. It will just take on a different form. Will it take on a higher form or a lower form depends on how its karma is weighing it down or lifting it up. These ideas come from traditions, from stories, from several different books, and so I want us to consider for just a minute some of the major sacred texts on which Hindu philosophy is based and where it has been collected. The first set of books are the Vedas. They were written between the 1500 and 1000 BC. They comprised of 4 books of hymns, the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. They are considered to be revealed truth from God. There are 2 types of texts. There are poetic hymns called mantras, and then there are commentaries on these hymns called brahmanas. And they develop the understanding of the origins, the worldview, the sacrificial system. They are the core philosophical beliefs in Vedic Hinduism. They were followed up by the Upanishads. The Upanishads were massive volumes of Sanskrit scriptures that were written between 800 and 500 BC. These are philosophical texts that form the theoretical basis for philosophical Hinduism. Some people will call them the Vedanta, which means the end of the Vedas. They are commentaries, and they are not considered to be revealed truth from God. They are commentaries written by human authors. 12 to 13 of them are considered to be ancient There are another 200 or more that are considered to be more contemporary. And it was during this time period, this 800 to 500 BC, that Hindu thought was being developed. The dualism between the physical, Brahman, and the soul, Atman. Are they two distinct things? Is God separate from the reality that was created? Are they both emanations of the divine? Is what we see real or just an illusion, just Maya? These philosophies were being developed during the period of the Upanishads. Then came the epics, over 2,000 years old. The two main epics are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. These stories are sources of inspiration to Hindus. The Mahabharata is the story of the ancient Hindu dynasties in North India and a huge fight that happened between 5 brothers and their cousins over who was going to rule India. These stories introduce the major deities, and the Bhagavad Gita, or Krishna's counsel to Arjuna, is the core of the Mahabharata. There are 700 verses on various philosophical issues. It is the most read Hindu scripture in the world. It is the source of the Hare Krishna movement. The Ramayana is a different story which tells the story of Ram and Sita. And then finally, there are the Puranas. These are additional stories and teachings about the Hindu gods. There are massive volumes of stories and scriptures related to individual Hindu deities. This includes the religious texts of the Jain and the Buddhist religions. A Jain would consider himself or herself a follower of a unique religion. A Buddhist would consider himself a follower of a unique religion. But a Hindu would consider a Jain and a Buddhist to be part of the Hinduism as a whole. So again, it gets very complicated, and each individual has their own version of Hinduism. Even the concept of who is God. How many gods are there in Hinduism? Is there one God? Are there 3 gods? Are there 330 million gods? In the Vedas, 33 gods are named, and this list is followed by the Sanskrit word for class. This word has a secondary or less common meaning of 10 million, so that's where we get the idea that there are 330 million gods. Other people would say there's one God for every person who lives in India. Most Hindus believe that the number is a figure that symbolizes the infinite forms of God, that there is just one God, one reality. Again, going back to that concept of monism, everything is God and God is everything. But generally, believing that there is one God, people find one form of God, and that is who they worship. He is first known in Hinduism, as you're talking to Hindus about, tell me about Hinduism, through the Trimurti, or the Trinity, we can say sometimes in English, 3 representations of God, each with his own role and his own consort. So the first 3 gods in the Trinity are Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Brahma is the creator god. He is the one who is depicted here in the center of the picture in blue. He is generally depicted as having 4 faces. Of course, in this picture you can only see 3 because the 4th face is pointed in the opposite direction. There are very few temples for him in India, and there is no sect dedicated to his worship, since his work is considered to be finished. He has already created this age. His wife, who is pictured there on the right, is Saraswati. She is worshipped regularly. She is the goddess of higher learning and the arts. She has 2 very famous sisters, Lakshmi, who is the goddess of wealth, and Parvati, who is the wife of Shiva. Shiva is the second of the 3 gods in the Trimurti. Shiva is considered to be the destroyer. He is often worshipped in the form of a lingam, a smooth, rounded stone placed upright on a circular base known as a yoni. That's what's depicted on the right side picture. Many people consider this to be a fertility symbol, the lingam representing the male and the yoni representing the female. Water is poured over it, or milk is poured over it in a demonstration of worship. Shiva is the destroyer. He spends a lot of time in meditation. He is married to Parvati, who is the sister of Saraswati, who is the wife of Brahma. The third of the major gods is Vishnu. So Brahma, the creator, Shiva, the destroyer, and Vishnu, the preserver. Many avatars or incarnations have appeared of Vishnu, and not all the avatars are human. There was a fish, a turtle, a boar, and a lion before the first human version, Vamana, a dwarf. Most people who worship Vishnu either worship him in the avatar of Ram, along with his wife Sita, they're pictured on the right picture, or they worship him in the form of Krishna and his consort Radha, who is in the left picture. Their story is in the Mahabharata. There are other gods in addition to these main three. I want to just introduce you quickly to some of the ones that are most widely worshipped. This is a depiction of Ganesh or Ganesha. He is the oldest son of Shiva and Parvati. One popular story is that Parvati created Ganesh while Shiva was away on a journey. When Shiva returned home, Ganesh would not allow him to see his mother. Not knowing who he was, Shiva cut off Ganesha's head and then went in to see Parvati. When she realized what had happened, she was distraught. So Shiva went and took the head from the first living thing that he saw, which was an elephant, and he brought Ganesh back to life. Another popular story about Ganesh is that he and his brother were in a race to determine who was going to be Lord and take over responsibility from Shiva. And so the race was set by their father to see who could run around the universe most quickly. And as his brother took off and began to run around the universe, Ganesh just circled his parents and said, "You are the universe to me." And so he won the race. Second god is Hanuman. Hanuman is a character from the Ramayana. His father was the wind. He has incredible strength and can jump very far, so far that it seems like he is flying. He is the ideal of devotion because of his faithfulness to Ram and Sita. He is not considered necessarily to know a lot. He's not a terribly bright person, but he's a very powerful person. One time he was sent to get some medicine and he was told that the herb that he needed grew on top of a mountain, and unable to determine which one he was supposed to pick up, he just grabbed the whole mountain and brought it back. Durga is usually referred to in speech by Hindus as Durga Ma, which means Mother Durga. She was created by the other gods when a buffalo demon threatened to overthrow them and cast them out of heaven. They all gave part of their power to create Durga, which means invincible. Because she has power from all of the other gods, she is also known as Shakti, which is the Hindi word for power. She's also known as Kali, and it is for her that the city of Kolkata is named. There she is worshipped through blood sacrifices. In some stories, she is known as the wife of Shiva. Here she is. This is a story of her going out, taking on multiple lovers and then cutting off their heads. And as she's sneaking back in, she wakes up Shiva, who's sleeping on the doorstep, and her tongue stuck out because she's like, whoops, I just got caught. There are multiple different stories. Any story I would tell you, someone would say, that's not a true story. You just made that up. Because every region had their own version of stories. As the worship within Hinduism began to become more homogenized, a god that was worshipped in one village was given the same name as a god that was worshipped in another village, and their stories, which were maybe contradictory or completely unrelated, began to be brought back together. So it doesn't all come together. As a matter of fact, when we ask the question, who is a Hindu, we have to ask ourselves, are they image worshippers or are they non-image worshippers? And then if they are image worshippers, do they worship Shiva? Do they worship Vishnu? Do they worship the Devi, one of the goddesses? Are they tantrics who worship physical or sexual ways? If they're non-image worshippers, is that because they're interested in spirituality and they just want to talk about ideas? Or maybe they're not even interested in spirituality at all. There are communists or socialists, agnostics, atheists, even hedonists who would call themselves Hindu because they are born and raised in South Asia. They don't believe in any god or in any philosophy, but they've been influenced by this thinking. So putting all of that together, we see that it's just very complicated. No two Hindus believe the same thing. That is why it is absolutely essential that we listen to and learn what our Hindu friends believe in order to effectively share with them the good news. We can't know what they believe unless they tell us. This chart illustrates a little bit of the philosophical bingo that is Hinduism. These two charts from the last slide and this slide are available in PDF form for you to download from the class shell. But you can't give a single answer. Who is God according to Hinduism? Well, there are the male gods and female goddesses, Shiva and Kali. There are animals and half animals. Some worship nature. Others say that God is infinite, the idea of monism. Where do they get their authority? Is it from the mythology, like the Ramayana story, or from their priests who know how to manipulate the universe and have almost magical powers? Is it from the scriptures, like the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, or is it from their gurus or teachers who live today? What's the problem with the world? Is it the anger of the gods and goddesses because they're not getting their way? Or is it because there are spirits or ghosts who have not been placated? Is it because the stars and the planets are angry and people are not following their astrological signs? Or is it because of their karma, the good deeds weighed against the bad deeds? And then once you determine what is the problem, how do you make things right? Is it through puja, which is prayer, receiving Shakti or power from the idol when it is worshipped? Is it through pilgrimages to holy places? Is it through bhakti or worship? Or is it through yoga, which means union through yoga? One practices self-discipline. So in our next session, we're going to talk about that daily. How does Hinduism influence what a person does? What are the pilgrimages? What are the festivals? What are the things one does in their home? What are the things one does in their temple? But as you can see, it's not a simple answer, and it's a very complicated group of religions growing out of many different contexts within South Asia. I hope that wasn't too confusing and was helpful, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Hope you're having a great week, and God bless. Epic stories, philosophical underpinnings. These are the things that make up philosophical Hinduism, but they don't really cover the day-to-day life of an average typical Hindu. That's what we're going to be looking at in our next session. Look forward to seeing you then.